And what's happening, everybody? Welcome on into the Check Your Brain podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, the Spotify, which is finally back to normal and it's going out, and Apple Podcasts and everywhere else. I think I may or may not be on iHeart, but we'll see. But usually all the major podcast platforms. This podcast is the Check Your Brain podcast, as well as YouTube, Rumble. I think I'm going to start putting stuff on Odyssey and a Patreon. If you enjoy this podcast and more of me, go to patreon.com/Tony Mazur for $3, just $3. There's other tiers, but for $3 a month, you get a bunch of podcasts a month, about 25. Is that too much? I don't know. You get your money's worth. I'll tell you that here on my podcast. That is my logo if you're watching on the YouTube page. Also, the YouTube page, I'm going to be playing this band's music on the audio version, but because YouTube has their, they get a little finicky when it comes to playing music. So I'll play a little bit of that in the post-production for the audio only on the podcast platforms, just not on YouTube. So on YouTube, I'll just link to it and we'll play some other stuff, more video exclusive stuff on this podcast. If I didn't introduce myself, my name is Tony Mazur, and I have Tracey and Brigitte here. They are with a band that it's a cover band, but you guys also have some original feeling with what you guys put out, which is called Three Legged Circus. And first of all, welcome to the podcast, folks.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's talk. We'll talk about introduce yourselves, talk about the band, and some of the side stuff that you guys also have going on.
Okay, so I'm Brigitte. So I help out Three Legged Circus. Tracey is he's the lead singer. I don't do anything with the music, but what I do is
She dances.
I do dance. I can't sing, but I can definitely dance.
You're the hype woman.
I am. Actually, I call myself the hype clown.
Oh.
Because I dress as a clown for all of their shows, and I go around and hype everybody up and
Get money.
get them on the dance floor and get people involved. And it's a completely different look. People love it. There's been times where I was like, oh, I'm not going to dress up, but the places, venues that book Tracey and the band, they ask for me to dress up. So that's kind of become a thing. And go ahead, you want to talk about your music?
Sure. The other thing is kind of cool too, where we've been playing. There's one bar in particular, Rawhides in Nashville, which we're going to be plugging. We're going to be playing on November 25th. They actually started dressing up, so I got a whole audience of clowns.
I like that. I mean, it's a little different from the Insane Clown Posse clowns.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, but what's interesting, I've always found this fascinating about how clowns and the so I'm recording out of Cleveland, and just last week they had the Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, world famous, whatever they called the whole thing, and the circus and clowns were always a fixture of our society up until what? And then all of a sudden clowns are now creepy. We don't want to be around clowns. Kids are scared of clowns. Like it basically took like one movie and one book to completely change how we view clowns. Thank you, Emmett Kelly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's funny. So clowns is my thing. I have several different clowns that I dress up as. I just finished a little short. I also have a podcast. My co-host my podcast, and my podcast is Hardcore Horror with Mike and Brigitte. But he's a retired movie director, and we went to CreepyCon together last year, and there's a lot of clowns there. It's all about their local clowns, and he kind of saw me interacting. I wasn't dressed up or anything, but I was helping him with his booth last year, and he was like, wow, you really like clowns, don't you? And I was like, oh yes, I do. So he come up with a little story, and we just finished up a script maybe 3 months ago, and it's just a little short, and that's my character is a killer clown. And I had brought some of the props to the film set, and some of them were some toys that I've had since I was like 5 years old, and they're all clowns. So I've always loved clowns. I know we're in my office. I have clowns everywhere. This is baby Bobo. He came from Georgia, right? Columbus,
Yeah,
Georgia.
Where we met.
Yeah.
Where we met Stephen at.
Yeah, we were at Stephen, and I had to, he goes, you left the booth for like 5 minutes and come back with a baby. Had to have you know, but yeah, clowns. You're right. Clowns really become popular for a lot of people. A few years ago, remember when all the things where people were dressing up like clowns and creeping everybody out, and that was a big thing. Maybe around like 2018, something like that. But no, for me, it's going on my entire life. I'm like, oh, but y'all are finally just catching up to me and realizing like clowns are like, awesome.
So you're the clown hipster.
I'm a clown hipster. That's right.
Well, let's talk about the music though, because you guys do a lot of the 80s metal covers, right?
Yeah, we do.
So so I'm born in the 80s, but I wasn't raised in it, and it took me a little bit to kind of really appreciate the 80s metal feel. And I would have to say it was around like 2005 that 80s resurgence really started coming back. I'm always fascinated how these trends keep coming. Like now is big 90s, and I'm seeing even kids like, oh, you remember 2000? We're going to do a 2000s party. I'm like, okay, I mean, sure, I lived that. It wasn't that great, but okay. But 80s made this comeback by the 2000s, by like the mid-aughts until 2010. And then it just seemed like every neighborhood bar had some band who's going to play Jesse's Girl, who's going to play the Outfield, Your Love, and basically any 80s, any Bon Jovi. So like, what was it about the 80s that really just, was it just because we were kind of looking at how things were going in the 2000s with the financial crisis and everything, and post 9/11, you're like, man, things were just better back then. Maybe we should just start playing some of that music. Because I remember by the 90s, if you still had the 80s metal hair and you were doing your hair, everyone's like, dude, we're listening to grunge now. We got Nirvana playing right now. We don't need to do your hair. You don't need to do makeup. Spandex. What's going on here? So talk about how that 80s resurgence and how you were able to capitalize on it.
Well, first of all, excuse me, I love the 80s. I am a child of the 80s. I was born in 1969, so I'm 54 years old. But I got into music at a young age. I was 4 years old. My dad used to have me get up and sing at church. And then he would have me go with a pastor on Sundays to the radio station. So I would sing at 4 years old at the radio station. Then I became a teenager, a little rowdy, ambitious teenager, and discovered girls. And so that's why I got into changing from doing what I was doing to the music, because the girls were prettier. And if you were in a band, you got pretty girls. So I kind of got into the girls. And so I got into doing the music, and turned out I couldn't play anything very well. I've got 3 or 4 guitars around here in the house now, and I can't play it for anything, but I can sing okay, I guess you could say. But so when the 80s started making its comeback, it was awesome. I guess I was 40, about when I was 40, I started going through the midlife crisis. I grew my hair back out. I only had one tattoo, only one. I have 53 tattoos now, and the majority of them I got them from age 40 until now. But once the music started coming back out, oh man, it was awesome for me. Like when Motley Crue and Def Leppard and Poison got together to do the big stadium tour, everybody was all excited. And then the scamdemic happened, and everybody's like, oh man, they've put it off. And then 3 years later, boom, you finally get it. You get the show. And so just to see everybody there at those shows, just reliving back in the way life was back in the day, what political back then was, Gorbachev. Everybody was worried about Gorbachev back then, I guess.
It was Reagan versus Tip O'Neill.
Yes. Oh God, can't forget old Tipper.
But what was funny was when I remember what year it was? 2008, and I saw Poison, Dokken, and not Skid Row, but Sebastian Bach live. And I started looking around at the crowd. And so 2008, so I'm 20 at the time, and you're seeing people that would be probably in their 40s, and they dressed up like they put the chaps back on, they put the vests, they put the they had the jeans with the holes torn in them. And everyone was kind of starting to relive those days. And at 20, I'm like, I don't get it. I mean, that's the 80s. And then I realized now we're 15 years later, and I'm like, yeah, I kind of want to go back to the time when I was raised. And there was just something about it. And then with me, with the music, it took me a little while to really appreciate, especially 80s metal, because it all seemed very monolithic when I was growing up, that Rat, Cinderella, these bands are just like, they're a carbon copy, Autograph. And then you start listening to them like, wait a second, that's a really good CC DeVille. That's some good guitar work there. That's intricate. Listen to the key changes, and you go, this is actually pretty good. And then I started getting really into them. I was getting into Megadeth and Peace Cells, and I really got to appreciate it a lot more. And I think a lot younger generations are doing that, especially when some of this music is ending up on TikTok too.
True.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's funny. So when I was in high school, it was the 90s, right? So I'm a 90s girl. But if you think about it, and you mentioned it earlier, that in the 90s, when you think about rock, it's more grunge. It's like it changed so completely. But I've always loved 80s rock music, always. And it's funny when we go out places and we're like, hey, do you like 80s, rock? And they're like, hell yeah. Everyone seems to love it. So he gets a good, a very diverse crowd. Always different ages, of all different kinds. People from everywhere come to see him. So it's not really geared towards any specific audience, I don't think. I think it's a pretty diverse show.
Yeah.
That was the thing about the music, how things change so quickly. And I just did a podcast on this talking about, so last week I saw Christopher Cross, and he had Sailing, he had some pretty big songs, he had the Arthur's Theme, it won an Oscar, he won a bunch of Grammys, and then MTV comes around, he's done. His career is just basically, he's living off of right now songs he put out 42, 43 years ago. And just because how MTV, it just changed that quickly. And it seemed like that 80s metal feeling had the same thing. It was, you were getting Poison, you were getting Warrant. As soon as Uncle Tom's Cabin and Cherry Pie comes out, and Janie Lane, who I met before he passed away, because he's from my neck of the woods.
Love Janie.
And it just seemed like you have Bobby Brown in that video, and the cherry pie falling in her lap and everything. And then as soon as you heard, I'm going hungry, and then you hear that opening riff to Smells Like Teen Spirit, it just seemed like everything just changed. Is that what your experience, what you saw too?
I hated Nirvana, first of all. Hated Nirvana, because when Teen Spirit came out and stuff like that, I saw what was happening. I saw that the 80s music was going away. And that's what I basically, chipped my teeth to. I love the 80s music. So when that started coming out, I didn't like it. And then Soundgarden. And in fact, I actually saw Soundgarden open up for Skid Row, Slave to the Grind tour.
Really? So that was about what, 80, 88?
Oh, no. It was more like, oh, gosh. I'm going to say 90, 91.
Oh, okay. So it was around Better Motor Finger then. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It was exactly then. And so I was, I saw the writing on the wall as far as with the music, and I was not happy with it. But then later on, like, I appreciate more of it now. Like, for example, Chris Cornell. Chris Cornell is an amazing singer. God rest his soul. Those guys were really good. And then you're going to laugh when I say this. I like Creed. She hates because I'm like, well,
the band.
Every 90s song, I was like, you sound like Creed. He's like, well, they all kind of sounded like that back in those days. Yeah, it cracks me up.
It really did. Whether it could be Days of the New, Creed, Pearl Jam. They all had Seven Mary 3. They all had kind of that right here.
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like.
So in from the 70s, those 70s acts like the Eagles or Heart or Kiss or ZZ Top, they had to adjust by the 80s, and some bands didn't make it. You had kind of more of your like softer rock bands didn't really kind of adjust, and they kind of fell by the wayside. Others, you had the Eagles that broke up, and Glenn Frey and Don Henley had a pretty good solo careers. Then you had Heart, who really kind of continued what they did in the 70s from Dreamboat Annie and Barracuda, and continued it with What About Love and Dreams, and Fleetwood Mac did a pretty good job, but a lot of bands weren't able to make that transition. But
True.
even bigger was those 80s acts that didn't transition to the 90s, other than Guns N' Roses was able to do it. Pantera, I think we talked about it on the phone about Dimebag. Pantera was an 80s metal band with they were in the spandex and the hair, and they decided one day, what are we doing? Why don't we just play music? Why don't we just scream into the microphone, just be raw and just be drunk the whole time? And then it worked, and they made their transition. But man, a lot of those bands did not make it too far out of they eventually had a nice comeback by the 2000s, but a lot of them kind of fell by the wayside.
Steel
Panther.
for example.
That's exactly who I was thinking about.
Yep.
Steel Panther.
Yeah.
It's a good example. Yeah.
Steel Panther's great.
Yeah, I love Steel Panther.
We saw them in concert this year at the beginning of the year, March, I think.
February.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. They're pretty wild.
They're funny.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on the direction of rock music, both of you? Because all three of us are rock people. We all grew up with it. We all love it. I still listen to it all the time. But, with the way how rock radio has changed over time, that you really don't hear a lot of certainly you won't hear metal on any station, much less satellite radio. That rock has now become this homogenous, anything from about Creedence Clearwater Revival to the Black Keys, and it's a rock station. It's not. Then you have some alternative stations, but there aren't the genres. There's not the 80s station, the 70s station. It's it seems like a diarrhea of rock music. That's like, oh, we'll make a big transition from Stairway to Heaven to Eddie Grant's Electric Avenue. Like, what? Sure, why not? So do you think that there is a little bit of hope? I know Gene Simmons has said that rock is dead, and others that if Maroon 5 is considered a rock band, if Imagine Dragons are rock bands, like, what do you guys think of it?
I think they're pop bands.
I do too. A lot of them are kind of has the more pop. I even think about that with country music.
Yeah,
country music. You're like, that's not country, or to me, it's not. Yeah, it's crazy how they're all just kind of just getting mixed all up, and and you're right. If you turn on a rock station, you could get there's just anything really.
It's all over the place.
It is. It's all over the place, and movies are kind of the same way. Because as soon as you said that, I started thinking about movies. Because I do a horror podcast. We talk a lot about horror movies, and horror movies is the same way. You have different genres, but inside those genres, you have your subgenres too. So it's just oversaturated with so many horror movies, and music's kind of the same way. But yeah, I feel like rock music is getting, like, there's a lot of it that I wouldn't even consider rock. It's more definitely pop.
But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, because you guys are in Nashville, and a lot of these rock acts decided instead of going to Hollywood or going to New York, they went to Nashville, and they're kind of around these. So, like, I hear Brantley Gilbert, for example, who's a country act, but you go, you see the tattoos, and you're like, if this were 20 years ago, you'd be playing rock music.
But he plays with Five Finger Death Punch.
Yes, exactly. Blackstone Cherry's another example. Zach Wilde could be doing country if he wanted to. So there is like that alternative outlaw, I should say. It's more like an outlaw country that, again, if it were 25, 30 years ago, probably would be rock music.
There's actually a tribute to Motley Crue that's a country album. It's really? Motley Crue. It's Motley Crue songs, but it's country artists doing it.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out. I know about Max Sabbath, which is the Black Sabbath cover where they sing about McDonald's songs.
What about Dolly Parton? She just did an entire rock album.
Yeah.
with, we went through the list, like with some really big
Nikki
name,
Sixx, I mean,
big name rock stars, Dolly Parton. So I do think that is pretty
Judas
cool.
Priest. I mean, she did a duet with him.
Yeah.
With Rob Halford.
Oh yeah, I mean, I like it, and especially going to a rock show. I've been to several country shows. My wife is a big country fan, and the party's fun. I'll admit that. You go tailgate in the parking lot, pounding beers and stuff, and it's just when I hear the music, I hear the banjo, and I appreciate I love the music. I'll go to any concert, even even bands that I've seen that I probably would have said, I probably could have seen them for free. It's okay. But there's a lot of bands out there that I will still go see, especially country. And I appreciate the slide guitar, appreciate the banjo, I appreciate a lot of this, but man, it's just, there's nothing that compares to being at a rock show, especially a metal show where you hear double bass pedals, you hear drop D chords, you hear all that. Like I saw Mudvayne over the summer, and it just, I'm like, there's nothing that compares to going to see Chad Gray up on stage just belting out Dig or something.
You start hearing a banjo play and you better run.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Depends where you're located, especially when it comes to Deliverance. By the way, speaking of, I'll put this on the screen here because you did mention the podcast here. Here's your podcast, Hardcore Horror, with Mike and Brigitte.
Blue hair right there. Check out the blue hair.
Yeah. Blue hair, don't care. No, that was my midlife crisis. Was my blue hair. No, I loved it. I loved it. It was fun. Always change up my look.
So this podcast, you talk about horror movies. So what would you say is probably some of the peak years of horror? Are you going back to the Universal days? Are you going back to the camp days of the 70s and the 80s? What about nowadays where the technology's there and the CGI makes it look very realistic? Like what are your opinions on the state of the horror movies today?
Well, we talk about that on the podcast a lot. We talk about anything and everything from old school to mainstream to micro super low budget films. Lots of we talk with a lot of local directors, actors, but we also do some bigger names too. It's called we come up with the name Hardcore Horror because both my co-hosts and I were into extreme horror movies. It's not for everyone. Tracey doesn't even watch a lot of extreme, but it's not the only thing that we talk about. We talk about pretty much everything. How we like, special effects versus CGI, and do you prefer it? Different movies work different ways. So we'll have like a list of movies that we watch for the week, and we'll talk about each one specifically. We always have a guest on there, either an actor, director, anyone that's involved in the making of horror films, and not just films. I've even had and a couple of different horror writers, authors on there. So it's not just movies, just really anything horror related. Honestly, we love it. We absolutely love it.
When I go back to the Universal days, and there's something about them, they still live on. I mean, you're talking about movies now that are 80 something years old that you can watch and still appreciate because of the storyline, because of obviously how primitive the special effects, quote unquote, are. Or as Butthead, these special effects aren't very special, but you can at least go, wow, you appreciate Lon Chaney, you appreciate some of these Boris Karloff and some of these actors and what they were able to do. And yeah, sure, many of them got typecast, but boy, they had a nice run in those days.
Yeah, even with Abbott and Costello.
Yeah,
Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein is one of the great movies.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's funny. It's a good comedy horror. Yeah. But we talk about those with any kind of anything horror related, and like I said, there's so many different genres of horror, and then you got your subgenres within all the different genres. And we've talked about this several times on the podcast. We always have a list of movies, and sometimes I'll go through my list and I'm like, damn, I just watched this like a week ago, but I don't even remember what the damn movie was about. Or I'll be like, have I seen this movie? So I ended up keeping a list because it's horror films are it's so oversaturated. So oversaturated. It's almost impossible to watch all of them.
And you have to go through the stinkers to get to the good ones too. So
now is that because of cable TV? You know, you have the 31 Days of Halloween now that they're stretching. It's kind of like it's the Christmas movies. It's like what they've done with Hallmark is, we need to, let's see, we're going to have Lacey Chabert is with Chad Michael Murray, and she's going back to her hometown and this and that. And they're just taking the same concept just over and over again. You say it's oversaturated. Is it because of, is it like people are really into the spooky season nowadays, that they're really gearing up for it? I guess how so over, when I say oversaturated, because is that because of the franchises that they keep putting out movies, the Friday the 13th, Nightmare Before Elm Street, all these other the Saw movies? It seemed like there was a Saw movie every year for a little bit. Is
started back up.
What's that?
That they just started back up.
Yeah,
of course they did.
They're always doing remakes, always doing remakes. No, I say we say oversaturated because a lot of the films that you just named are your mainstream Hollywood, a lot of the big franchises. So if you're a real true horror movie fan, any horror fan would know that when you go to stream something, I mean, there are things out there that the average person would have no idea. You can go on Netflix, and Netflix has its own code. If you search that code, it's just horror movies. And we're talking probably about 2,000? Just 2,000 movies alone on Netflix.
2,000 for horror movies. So
for horror movies, yes.
Is this what happened? You talk about oversaturated. Like when when they put out a thing on Netflix and they say, hey, we have a new Stranger Things season comes out. Everyone's like, time for Stranger Things. Doing nothing. I'm shutting my phone off. I'm going to watch Stranger. So now people will watch an entire season in a weekend. I'm like, that's not what we're supposed to do. Like, I think internally as human beings. So is that what people are doing with these horror movies, that they go, okay, there's 2,000 of them to go through. Let's get started. And they just make a weekend out of it.
It's crazy. Well, that's what Mike and I talk about, that it's not possible to watch every horror movie. And we have a game that we play on the podcast. Every podcast we play movie quotes. It's a little game that we'll play. Mike will rattle off some horror movie quotes, and myself and whoever the guest is will try to guess what movie it's from. And we started doing that because quotes have always, horror movie quote or quote, actually movie quotes in general, always been my thing. It's fun. I'm constantly going around, like he was doing earlier when he was talking about the banjo, but it's harder than what you think it would be. It's so much harder because I'm like, oh my gosh, I've seen this movie like a couple of times, but I don't remember that quote specifically. But yeah, it's not even possible for one person to watch every horror movie out there. And I said 2,000 on Netflix. Tubi is probably my favorite place to stream horror movies.
We have a movie on Tubi, by the way.
Yeah, horror movies on Tubi.
Oh,
yeah, we were.
What's it called?
It's called Deadlines.
Plural,
yes. Got to put the S at the end of it. Yeah, Deadlines. It's on Tubi. That's true. I love this. I'm partial. That was my first feature film. And Tracey is the lead, and they based that movie off of his character, Sebastian Michaels. That's his vampire character. And the director...
my alter ego.
It is his alter ego, totally. Yeah, it's also known... I'm surprised you're not Gemini. I'm sure it is your alter ego. But, Deadlines on Tubi.
There it is.
Yes.
There it is.
There it is.
That's great. No, I'll have to definitely check this out here. It'll be, I don't know if I could play it for the YouTube thing, but there's the page if anyone wants to go check it out if you're watching the video here. I definitely have to check that out. No, that's great. Yeah, because that's the thing about I mentioned about the quality when it comes to movies now, is I've heard this about Kevin Smith movies, so the Clerks movies and Mallrats. And there was somebody had mentioned this, and it's a great point. Kevin Smith's movie Clerks, 1994, was filmed in the Quick Stop in Leonardo, New Jersey. Basically, the whole movie was filmed in there. Very low budget. It's in black and white. Then it gets so popular, his budget increases. But in a lot of people's minds, the quality of the film, the writing and everything decrease. Do you kind of feel that way when it comes to these franchise movies where as the technology improves, the CGI, that it looks so realistic of someone getting decapitated, or there was like a post goes through their chest, but it seems like there's really no writing. It may as well have AI come up with it. Are you of this belief too?
Yes, 100%. So like I said, I'm a huge clown fan. I watch all of the horror killer clown movies. It Chapter 2, the first time I saw that, I saw it in the theater, and the budget was millions of dollars, but they put so much into it. There was so much CGI that it almost kind of looked cartoonish to me.
Yeah, I didn't like
it. It really did. I was like, oh my gosh, I could have took that same movie without the millions of dollars and made it look just as good, and it maybe even more realistic. But it did it. Sometimes if you go over too much with, and that's just my personal opinion, but if it's too much CGI, it does get that kind of cartoonish look. And don't get me wrong, the movie was good. I'm just a Pennywise fan, so
I didn't like it.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't. It's not for everyone, but I do think that I don't judge movies based off of their budget. I've got some movie posters back here in the background. One of them is a micro budget Chicken's Blood. It was filmed locally. I think they even did some guerrilla filming, but the movie itself is great. I mean, when I say micro budget, I'm just talking just a few $1,000s, and it ended up turning out really, really well. Oh, he's going to show you the poster deadlines.
I like that. Yeah. Who's cleavage?
Well, it was supposed to be her, but it's actually my boss, Stacy Dixon, at Slaughterhouse.
Mm-hmm. She kind of did a photo shoot for it, and the director told everyone it was me. I was like, my boobs aren't that big. And he was like, he said, honey, just a push-up bra and some good camera angles. Nobody will know the difference. So,
you can tell
don't deny it. Well, Tracey, what's your if you're not the biggest horror fan, what's your favorite genre of movies then?
Oh gosh, what I like to call my thing is psychosexual thriller killer movies. So, like for example, Seven would be one.
Okay.
Things like that. I like those kind of movies. I like ones that make you think, and I like scary movies. Don't get me wrong. She likes really extreme.
I watch shit that'll fuck most people up. I'm just saying. Yeah.
And so I like movies that make you think. As far as with a horror movie, if it's campy, that's kind of cool too. But if it's just a stab and stab and stab and stab and stab and mutilate. Why? If it doesn't have a story to it, it's not for me.
Yeah, that's what a lot of them. I remembered seeing was it My Bloody Valentine in 3D. So it was just basically it was stabbing and boobs was the whole movie.
Oh, so that was the remake then.
The one that came out, it was like 2009, I believe. And it was like, but it was again looked great as far as the CGI, but boy, that was not left a lot to be desired as far as plot and at least staying true to it. I introduced my wife a couple of years ago to American Psycho, and she that is one movie I can't even bring up in front of her. She hates it. She's like, there's no ending to it. She's like, there's no resolution. He's not arrested. And I'm like, of course, because it's a psychological thriller. Is Patrick Bateman, did he really murder all those people? Did he go on this rampage? Did he really murder that homeless guy? Or was it in his mind? The fact that he's confessing all this stuff and his attorney's like, oh, that was so funny. You left that on your answering machine. And he gets away with it. And I said, that's the twist. That's the, forget M. Night Shyamalan. That's the twist. That's the Bret Easton Ellis twist there. And she's like, no, there has to be resolution. Yeah.
It's funny you say this because we, our last podcast that we had, same exact conversation. And I think I brought it up because a lot of people ask me, knowing that I'm a huge horror movie fan, they'll say, so, well, does it have a good ending? And I'm like, well, I guess it depends on like what you consider a good ending. And I get the same thing, same response every time. Well, does the good guys get away? Does the bad guys, do they catch the bad guys, or the bad guys die? I was like, that doesn't necessarily make the ending or not. That's not what I decided. And so I guess, personal preference, but I'm like you. I did like American Psycho. My all-time favorite horror movie is called Martyrs.
Okay.
It's a
extreme.
It is considered extreme, but even for extreme, Tracy, I had him watch it once and he did like it.
And I don't like subtitles.
Yes, got to read the subtitles, but you know what? It's another conversation I love to have, is that for a lot of your horror movies are the great ones are foreign films. So you do have to,
extreme ones,
yeah.
not great ones, extreme ones.
Not well, yes. That's true. But
is this the one? 2008?
No,
that's Dakota Johnson.
No, I think the original was 2008. So they did an American remake of it, and I was so pissed off. I was so upset when they did the remake. I didn't even watch all of it because they ruined it. I believe the original is 2008.
Really?
Did you pull it up?
Yeah, that's 2008 right there, I guess. Yeah. And I mean, is this a foreign thing? I don't recognize any of these names.
See, that's it. Yep, that's definitely it. It's 2008. I think they remade it somewhere like maybe around 2016, 17, something like that. But yes, that is 100% it. It's a really
2015.
Great movie. Oh, 2015. Okay. 2015. Well, I was close, but yeah, American remake. I wouldn't recommend it. It's worth watching the subtitles. It is very extreme, and it's great because it's almost like two stories, and they do a really great job of like intertwining those two stories together to make one full feature film. It's really great. The acting is amazing. The cinematography, the writing, everything. I absolutely love that movie.
Well, you can hear all that and more on the Hardcore Horror Podcast with Mike and Brigitte there. Go check it out. Go subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Of course, after you listen to this podcast that you're checking out for folks at home. And Tracy, of course, we have Three Legged Circus. Now, you say you have some gigs in November, I believe?
We have one here in Nashville at Rawhides. It's right after Thanksgiving on Saturday, the 25th, I believe, of November. And the closest one we have coming up is in Huntsville, Alabama. It's going to be a wild show. It's a Halloween show. When is that one? On the 21st?
Yeah, it's October 21st at 8 p.m. And this is in Huntsville, Alabama. It's Terror Under the Big Top. And they're Three Legged Circus is the headliners, and this is gonna be really cool because they've hired the venue. They've hired like these professional clowns, like burlesque clowns, and
this is gonna be a clown burlesque show. And
yeah, I'm like, ooh, I might have some competition a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm really excited about it. And like a clown that walks on glass, and one that swallows fire and does all kinds of
it's a freak show.
Cool things.
It sounds like the Jim Rose Circus.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a nice freak show. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
No, I'm looking forward to So if your folks are listening outside of my neck of the woods here, I'd love to go. I'd love to go see you guys, whether it's in Nashville or something, and check out the show. Like what music? Like, I don't want to give away a set list, but if you're gonna go, and obviously if it's the October 21st, you got to go dress up and get ready for Halloween. But what kind of artists or what kind of would we expect to hear in that, where we could all enjoy the sights and everything, but then also jam to some of the music?
You're gonna hear songs by Motley Crue. You're gonna hear songs by Dokken. You're gonna hear songs by Twisted Sister, Kiss, Van Halen, Rat, Cinderella. It's just right down the spectrum. Van Halen, I do it all basically.
Do you do Van Hagar too?
No, heck no. I'm gonna pass on that one. Now, I will say, here's the other thing. I'm more of a Van Hagar fan than a Van Halen fan.
Really? Okay, explain that, because that's a controversial opinion.
It's very controversial. Sammy Hagar can still sing.
True.
David, not so much anymore.
No.
But
I did like Montrose, so I'll say that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Montrose back before a long time ago.
David, he could put on a really good show.
Yeah, he's a showman. He's not a
he was
singer.
a showman.
He's a showman.
And this guy over here, let me tell you, he gets on stage and he be doing those David Lee Roth kicks and jumping around.
the high kick.
I mean,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you just.
And the next morning, I'm laying in the bed like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not the 80s anymore. Oh, back hurts. I can't move.
Yeah. Tracey and the band, they put on a really, really great show. I think it's one thing to, sit up on a stage. Like I said, Aaron Lewis is the only person, in my personal opinion, that can get away with just sitting up there with the guitar singing. I think it's all about, if you're going to see someone live, it's all about the performance in the show.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, like I was watching some of the videos that you folks have, and I mean, I'd love to go check this out, and especially just for the music.
Yeah.
I got a little video here in the background. I'm not going to play the audio, but maybe I will in post production. But yeah, it's I enjoy some of the music, and I enjoy a lot of this. Although it is funny just hearing you say that you were into more Van Hagar stuff, because I like Sammy. I understand why they went with Sammy, but there some of it was just it just didn't seem like the same band, and I know a lot of people kind of felt that way when it came to the direction of the band, anyways, from 1984. But my other Van Halen controversial opinion, the best singer in that band was Gary Cherone.
He's a good singer. Very good.
He's a great singer, but I'm like, as far as like vocal talent and everything, not so much showmanship, but vocal talent, I thought Gary Cherone was fantastic. It's just that album was very lacking, and you could tell that. You could tell that Alex and you could tell that Eddie were not really in my opinion, giving it their all.
I agree. That's an old video there. That's like Three Legged Circus back in the beginning.
Yeah,
was this before more of the theatrics then?
Yeah, that was.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's the bras hanging from.
I know, I can see the bras hanging up on the stage. That's all I can tell. I was like, oh, that's at Bowie's
in
Third
Nashville.
Avenue, downtown Nashville. I can tell by the venue.
I gotta go back to Nashville. It's been a while since I was up at a lot of those places. We enjoy going to Roberts, and I liked going to Tootsie's as opposed to Roberts, even though Tootsie's the same beer that I got at Roberts for $2 was $9 at the bar next door.
Yeah, that's the thing. Nashville, it's always been a touristy area, but not like it is now.
No.
It's like it's the bachelorette capital of the world right now. They all descend. Like Thursday
Vegas
comes, East. Exactly. Thursday comes and they all just descend in Nashville, and they're there until Sunday, and they make a mess, and it's bad. It's really bad.
I went there. I had family that lived in Nashville back in the early 90s. So you're talking about the Hat Act, country acts and stuff. And I just remember going to Nashville, and it was just like, it was very dusty. There wasn't much going on. It kind of was, I don't want to say it fell by the wayside, but it wasn't the Broadway that it is, especially since 2000. And I just remember it being like very hot and muggy and going down there, and there wasn't much to do. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're going to Nashville for our bachelorette party. Nashville, really? And then it just took off. And then I took my wife there about almost 2 years ago, and she's like, when are we coming back? Well, we got to go to other places besides that one strip, though.
We're both Nashville natives, so we hate the way Nashville has changed. It's become very metropolitan.
Very much so.
We're both kind of old school Nashville, and we just went to all these people. There's so many people moving from. They call us unicorns. If you're a Nashville native, that's what they call us, as unicorns. And because there's so many people that move here, and we're all like, go the fuck back.
I think a lot of it had to do with. I used to be a background actor on a TV show called Nashville that was filmed here for 6 years. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it, I started noticing a lot of people started coming to Nashville just because of the TV show. They wanted to see this is where Raina's house is, and Deacon plays here. And it was definitely, I think Nashville had a lot to do with the way Nashville is blown up the way it has.
Possibly, because when did Nashville start film? When did that come out? 2008. That's a guess. Did you watch the show Nashville? I didn't.
No,
Yeah,
I
the
just
reason I'm
remember it was
unemployed.
on.
You're the reason I'm
He
unemployed.
was giving me a hard time. I'm like, well, it didn't look like anything I would be interested in, but I've heard it's really, really good. And I'll tell people that he was in Nashville, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is the greatest thing!" And I'm like,
Yeah, I was
And-
what you call a featured extra, is what you would say. So basically, one of the main characters, Deacon Claiborne, I was in his band, the Rebel Kings. So he goes from playing country music to joining the biggest band in the world at the time, was called the Rebel Kings, and I was in the Rebel Kings.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's and then now look at Nashville right now. Now you have a Buc-ee's and a Whataburger. What's going on here?
Buc-ee's is getting close to where we are. Yeah, that's one thing. Man, I actually posted something on Facebook the other day. I'm like, I just saved $65 today because I didn't stop at Buc-ee's.
Get those beaver nuggets.
Yeah, hey, those are
Beaver
good.
nuggets.
Beaver nuggets and the brisket.
No, I gotta make another
Turkey.
trip. I gotta
Turkey.
take the missus to Rocky Top. She's never been to Knoxville, and she's gotta make another
Go
trip to
Vols!
Nashville. Oh yeah, absolutely. I love Knoxville's are kind of a cool town, and I've been down to the Neyland Stadium. It's a lot of fun, and but yeah, I gotta make a trip. It's only got maybe about 7+ hours away from me, so that's not a bad drive for me. But
You
yeah,
said you're in
no, it's
Cleveland?
what's that?
So you're in Cleveland?
Yep, I'm in Cleveland. Yes.
Yeah, you guys kicked our butts a few weeks ago, Titans.
Yeah, well, Ryan Tannehill's not really the answer at quarterback anymore. They need to figure something out, and otherwise,
I mean,
Mike Vrabel, who's an Ohio guy, who's actually from not far from here,
He is.
might be on the hot seat.
Well, the thing is, I mean, I think he's a pretty decent quarterback. I mean, I think he'd get it done if he quit throwing interceptions. But the one thing is, anybody, if they have a better offensive line, our offensive line, I mean, he can't stay up most of the time. So it's hard to complete anything if you don't have a good offensive line.
He says hike and he's on his back. I watched that whole game, and it was so frustrating because I've seen Ryan Tannehill do pretty well for the Titans, and it's I don't know, maybe they need to bring Mike Munchak back and Bruce Matthews and put him on.
Oh wow, that's old school there. Wow, that's going way back.
Y'all are talking like so over my head because I don't know anything about sports. The only thing that I know about football and that I love is football food.
True.
That's it. That's all I got for you.
She makes me football food, and it shows too.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need a couple more gigs to work that off, then, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we got
a couple more David Lee Roth high kicks.
Exactly.
Well, the band is Three Legged Circus. Go check them out, and it's been a pleasure talking to you folks. And it's good luck with everything, with the podcast, with the gigs, with everything. I mean, we're recording this in October. It's going out in October, so it's a perfect time to talk to you guys about basically everything that you have going on. This is your season. This is your Christmas right now.
Yes.
Yeah. It's it's harder 365 days out of the year, but October's like on steroids for us. So
oh yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again, and good luck, and best of luck going forward with you guys. And it's I love the concept. I love what you guys have going on, and really capitalizing on the big spooky season that we have going on nowadays.
Before I forget, I have to tell you something.
Yes, sir.
I drive a hearse.
Oh, that's right. We forgot to talk about that. Yeah. What's burying the lead, because we talked about that on the phone. Talk about the hearse thing. This is amazing.
Basically, I have a friend here in Nashville that I used to play in a band with called Toxic Pistols. And so he decided he didn't want to play music anymore. And so I took Toxic Pistols and changed the name to Three Legged Circus. And that's what we started doing. He'll take caskets and he'll wrap caskets. And so he has a company, it's called Nashville Casket Company, and I'll deliver caskets for him. And it's like, for example, Dimebag Darrell, the Kiss casket came from him. Wow. Vinnie Paul, the Kiss casket came from him. So anytime you get a Kiss casket, it goes straight through.
Yeah, they're not your normal caskets at all. They're all like specially made for someone. They're they're actually really cool for caskets.
So what you're saying is people are dying to get them.
People are just
dying to get
They're
it.
dying to get it. And so one day he called me up, and where he's located, he works out of his house, and he was like, well, the city's gotten in touch with me and told me that I've got too many vehicles at my house for a residence, and I need to get rid of one. Would you be interested in buying the hearse? Would I be interested? How much? And he's like, well, 12.5. It was a 2006 with 46,000 miles on it. It's a Chevy. I'm sorry, not a Chevy. It's a Chrysler 300, and it is amazing. It's so fun. Whenever I'm out and about driving it, I mean, right now it's not so crazy because it's Halloween season. But when they see me like at a gas station, they'll come over and like look in the car. The very first night I got the car, I went to Walmart. We were shopping at Walmart, and we're in the back, and I'm opening up the back, and I'm putting groceries in, and you hear this guy like, oh, hell no. What? No, he's putting groceries back there when them bodies go. Oh, hell no. And the next thing you know, he like comes back behind where we are, and he just kind of like jerks his head and just goes, no, y'all got to get out of here. Y'all scaring shit out of me. Y'all got to go. He was scared. But it is so fun. I love my hearse.
So do you gig in that? Do you put all the equipment in there?
Absolutely. Every gig I go to is in the hearse. Yeah. Everybody's like, they love the hearse.
Do they all peek in? Does anyone try to mess with it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I let people in, get in the back, and I'll shut them in and tell them for $100 I'll let them out. Or
we have a black coffin. We put the black coffin back there and a skeleton. That way, because people do think it's the craziest thing to me that he was leaving a grocery store not like a couple weeks ago, and he goes, I'm walking out there, and there's this like lady like looking in the windows. I was like, let's put something creepy back there and really scared.
I remember when we went to Stony River. That was hilarious.
Yeah, it's like a bougie restaurant in Nashville, and I got out of the car and I was like, do you think the bodies are going to be okay? Like while we eat dinner? And like all these people in the parking lot are looking. So we love to just joke around and have fun with it. I really wanted a boat. I didn't get a boat. I got a hearse instead. So
yeah, there's a video for that too, because she asked me for a boat, and I told her, yeah, we'll get a boat sometime. So one day I come home, and I'm like, guess what? I got you something. I got your boat that you've been wanting so bad. She goes, no, you got me a boat? I'm like, I sure did. I'm like, cover your eyes. So she's covering her eyes, and I get her daughter to videotape it on Facebook Live, and we get out there, and she walks out, and then I'm like, okay, open your eyes. And she's like, that's not a boat.
I was so confused. I was like, oh, it's a boat, all right.
That's what I said. It's a boat, all right. It's huge.
I'm scared to drive it. I won't even drive it because it's huge. I drive a Cadillac Escalade, and I will not drive the hearse. It is huge.
15-year-old Tony would say, so what's it like to drive a hearse? 35-year-old Tony would say, how is it on gas?
Gas really isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Is the Escalade worse?
I would say yes.
Yeah, probably.
Yes.
Yeah, probably. It's one thing that really creeps me out about like what I'm scared to drive is that you wouldn't think about this unless you're actually sitting in it, but you can't see. I don't even know how to explain it. You can't see. So it's got the window.
Yeah, right behind you is where you're sitting is glass. So back there where you can see where the bodies go. And so right there's a glass. And so when you're driving down the road, whenever a car is coming, this direction, it shows up right here in the mirror. And so the back of the glass, and it shows up in the mirror, and it kind of makes it look like they're coming at you.
Yeah, it's really weird to drive.
Yeah, you have to get used to it.
Explain it. He ended up getting a camera, a backup camera, because you can't see to back it up. And I mean, you just can't see, and it's huge. So I'm like, to drive it. I haven't driven it yet. So I'll just stick to my Escalade, and that's it.
That reminded me of a story. My dad was he was a cop back in the day, and he had a motorcycle. He got into an accident, and it was years later. He always wanted to get a motorcycle again, and my mom surprised him and said, "We got you a bike." And he's like, and he's already thinking about how to deck it out and the leather and everything. And is it Harley? Is it going to be? I don't care if it's Yamaha or Honda or whatever. No, it was a mountain bike.
Oh, wow. That's funny. That is
And,
funny.
and just the look on my dad's face of, I don't want to upset my wife here, especially in front of the children, but I also need to show her this isn't exactly what I wanted. I wanted video games and you got me socks and underwear for Christmas. That's kind of what it was like.
I actually sold a Harley to get the hearse.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Yep, I did. It had a Heritage. It was a 2006 Heritage Softail, and I sold it for a 2006 car hearse. It's funny.
No, hearse is a hearse of curse, right?
Exactly. It's a lot of fun. I
There you
recommend
go.
one to anybody.
Well, Three Legged Circus, go check them out online. And I'm going to play some of the music as well here in the background. But Tracey and Brigitte, thank you so much for doing the podcast here. It's a real pleasure. And
Thank you,
one of
Tom.
these times when I'm in Nashville, I have to either meet up with you guys, have a drink, or just see a gig. I'd love to see this show.
Let me know when you're coming, and I'll let you know.
And if you folks enjoyed this podcast, go check me out on the Check Your Brain podcast, wherever you are listening or even watching this podcast, whether it's YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, Vimeo, anything like that, or on the major podcast platforms. My name is Tony Mazur. Thank you for checking out. And I've got another free episode of the Check Your Brain podcast coming up next Wednesday. Bye, everybody.